What's up everybody, I'm Hoops and Hip Hop, and it is time once again to look at some of the best Pokemon theories of all time. In this series, we have been going through every region of the Pokemon world, and I have been sharing with you guys some theories that originate from each individual region that I personally feel are the best theories of all time that come from that region. So far, we have covered Kanto, Johto, and Hoenn, and today it is time to cover the Sinnoh region. The Sinnoh region is all about myths and legends and the origin of the Pokemon world itself, so of course you can expect it to be jam-packed with fan theories because there is a lot of really good information to work with in Sinnoh. With that being said, I have got 5 theories to share with you guys today that originate from the Kalos region, and I personally cannot wait to share them with you because I think they are fantastic. So without any further ado, why don't we go ahead and just check it out? These are 5 of the best Sinnoh Pokemon theories of all time. Okay, so why don't we start the video off with a rather classic Pokemon theory that just so happens to originate from the Sinnoh region, and that is the idea that the unknown are basically like the coding or the stitching of the universe that holds it all together. This theory originates of course from the Sinnoh region and the creator of the Sinnoh region and the Pokemon world itself, Arceus, and more specifically it originates from Arceus's Pokedex entries where it states that Arceus used its 1,000 arms to create the universe. Now, obviously Arceus doesn't literally have 1,000 arms, so this led theorists to kind of speculate what those 1,000 arms could be. And of course, as you might be aware, Arceus is also very heavily associated with the unknown. And in particular, we actually see Arceus create another one of the creation trio in the Sinjoh Ruins event in Heart Gold and Soul Silver with the help of Unknown as they fly all throughout the room. This, as well as the fact that in the Rise of Darkrai movie, we see Dialga and Palkia fighting against one another, and as they fight each other and send their attacks in opposite directions, we see Unknown blow out and scatter all over the place from the origin of those attacks, almost as if the beings who created time and space itself are ripping it apart, and it's literally coming apart at the seams, and those seams are the Unknown that we see flying about as Dialga and Palkia continue their fight. And this whole idea really makes a lot of sense when you think of the unknown as the code of the universe, because of course the unknown all resemble letters and symbols of the Latin alphabet, which are commonly used in computer code. So all of these pieces really come together to make a compelling argument that the unknown, instead of being useless as they might seem in battle, are actually immensely important because they literally hold the fabric of the universe together. This next theory also involves Arceus, and I mean, did you really expect anything less coming from the literal god of the Pokemon world? Anyway, this theory is a rather recent one coming from none other than Loxton, and if you are remotely interested in Pokemon theories at all, I highly recommend you checking out the full video on Loxton's channel because it is a great one. Anyway, this theory, even though it has a lot to do with Generation 4, actually originates in Generation 2 for its source material, more specifically in the third Pokemon movie, Spell of the Unknown. Oh hey, what do you know, the Unknown are here again too, what a surprise. Yeah, you know what, it seems like this theory actually has a lot of similar elements to the last theory, and that's because this theory is actually depicting the very same theory that we just talked about prior to this, except in a slightly different way. At the beginning of the movie, we see Molly Hale as well as her father looking through a book of legendary Pokemon, and even though we see Entei in the book, we also see a number of other legendaries in the book throughout the movie as well that don't really look like any Pokemon we know, or at least that was the thought during Generation 2 when this movie came out. Now that we are in Generation 7, almost Generation 8, we can take a look at this book one more time and actually make a lot of parallels to very recent legendaries that we have seen in current generations, such as the sun type of thing that we see in the book, very closely correlating to Solgaleo, who is the sun legendary Pokemon as it basks over a very tropical looking region, which could very well be Kalos since it is also tropical. We also see a very fairy-like Pokemon as well, and even though this doesn't necessarily depict a legendary, it could be representing the introduction of the fairy type that came just a generation before Solgaleo in Generation 6 with Pokemon X and Y, so it definitely seems with these pages that the future of Pokemon was being predicted and shown to us. With that said, there there is also one more page as well, and it depicts the unknown but in a different sort of way, because other than the unknown, there aren't really any other creatures on this page that could be construed as Pokemon that we have never seen before, and instead there's just some old guy standing on the edge of a cliff. Well, according to this theory, this guy is actually one of the Pokemon that is being hinted at, just like we saw on the other pages, and the Pokemon in particular that this old guy is meant to represent is none other than Arceus. If you take a second to think about it, this actually makes perfect sense, because one of the things that Molly Hale's father says at the beginning of the movie while they are looking at the book is that this book was created by an artist who drew legendary Pokemon as they might look like. So essentially, all of these pictures are artists' depictions of legendary Pokemon. And what is one way that a lot of people seem to view God, or seem to basically artistically represent him as? Well, that would be a person. And more specifically, it would be a person in a white robe with maybe some long hair and a beard. Well, that's exactly how this guy looks, and what is this guy doing exactly in the picture? It looks like he's kind of talking to, or maybe even commanding the unknown, and this is where this other previous theory that we talked about comes into play and really ramps up the believability of this specific theory. Because as we just discussed with the previous theory, it has been theorized that Arceus used the unknown in order to help create the universe, and it very much looks like this would-be Arceus character in the book is commanding these unknown in some sort of way. And if you look at the location where all of this is happening, you will notice first and foremost the Greek-like structures that the unknown are surrounding, and they look very much like the pillars from the Spear Pillar, which is where Arceus actually created the Sinnoh region and presumably began to create the whole rest of the Pokemon world. So all of this together, the depiction of a classic godlike figure which could very easily parallel to Arceus, the appearance of the unknown, which we already know are very closely related to Arceus, which also coincides perfectly with another theory that we just discussed, and finally all of this taking place in what looks exactly like Spear Pillar, where Sinnoh was actually created in the first place, paints a very, very convincing picture, no pun intended, that this picture, along with its other counterparts, is giving a glimpse at a future generation of Pokemon with the creation of the Pokemon world at the hands of Arceus, which of course comes from Generation 4, 2 whole generations ahead of when this picture debuted. I definitely gotta give a salute to Loxton on this one, because not only is this, in my opinion, one of the best Sinnoh Pokemon theories, it is also personally one of my favorite Pokemon theories of all time. Okay, next up is a theory that I actually created along with my good friend Birdkeeper Toby, and even though I really hate to toot my own horn, I personally think this theory is really cool, so I decided to include it in the video. The idea behind this theory is that ghost Pokemon aren't actually ghosts at all, and instead this is what they've been labeled as within the world of Pokemon. The reason why we can say that ghost Pokemon aren't actually ghosts is because of a couple major inconsistencies, starting first with the Pokemon Marowak. In Generation 1, we see the ghost of a Mother Marowak inhabiting the Pokemon Tower, and it is quite literally a ghost. But then in Generation 7, we were introduced to a Alolan Marowak who is part ghost type, but compared to the ghost of the Mother Marowak, is nowhere near being an actual literal ghost. On top of that, when you just think about ghost-type Pokemon as creatures, it doesn't really make sense for them to be essentially dead from the start, because if we go back to Arceus in all of its knowledge and wisdom, do we really think that amongst all of the flying types and water types and grass types that it created, it would also create a breed of creatures that were literally dead from the start, that literally hatched from eggs being dead from the beginning? Like, that's majorly counterintuitive to be birthed being already dead. So Toby and I believe that the ghost-type label is actually a mislabel that has to do with the very first ghost-type Pokemon, chronologically speaking, Giratina. Giratina was created by Arceus alongside Dialga and Palkia, but it didn't really want to follow all of the rules, and so as such it got banned into the Distortion World. And we believe in the Distortion World is where its type was changed to the part ghost type. But rather than being the ghost type, we believe that it's more of an antimatter type, since the Distortion World is the world of antimatter. And as for why it is referred to as the ghost type instead of the antimatter type, well, one of Giratina's main points of entry into our world from the Distortion world is Turnback Cave, and Turnback Cave is literally described as a large cemetery. So if you were a regular person kind of just out on a stroll and you happen to go by Turnback Cave and you just so happen to be around when Arceus or something else from the Distortion world was coming through that portal into our world, you might describe that particular thing you saw, given that you're in a cemetery, as a ghost. And so this is where the ghost classification came from, because the first sighting of a ghost, aka antimatter type Pokemon, was in Turnback Cave, and it was simply misidentified by the person who saw it as a ghost. There are a lot of other smaller bits and pieces to this theory as well that really help to strengthen it up that unfortunately I do not have the time to go over here. But if you are interested in the theory and want to hear the full version with all of its details, you can click the iCard at the top right corner of the screen to check it out. This next one is another one of my favorite Pokemon theories ever because it connects two characters and two generations together almost seamlessly. The theory here is that Professor Sycamore of Kalos is actually present in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum as one of Professor Rowan's aides, and not only that, he is actually the father to Dawn and or Lucas, aka the opposite player character that you don't choose when you play the game. The evidence behind this theory is that first, in Professor Sycamore's laboratory, there is a scientist who outright says that Professor Sycamore studied under Professor Rowan when he was younger. In addition to this, we also know that Professor Sycamore and Professor Rowan also study very closely related topics, as Professor Rowan studies Pokemon evolution, whereas Professor Sycamore studies Pokemon Mega Evolution. So we've narrowed down that Professor Sycamore was at one point one of Professor Rowan's aides, but as far as being the father to Lucas and or Dawn, there is actually one of Professor Rowan's aides in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum that outright states that they are the father character to the opposite player character that you choose in the game. So we know that Professor Sycamore at one point in time was one of Professor Rowan's aides, and we know that one of Professor Rowan's aides in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum is Dawn and or Lucas's father, but how do we connect this specific aide to being Professor Sycamore specifically? Well, it actually comes down to Dawn and Lucas, because if you take a look at their designs, more particularly their clothing, they actually have a very European-inspired look. And if we take a look at Lucas in particular, we can see that he is wearing a beret, which is a very, very French-inspired piece of clothing, which of course is the location of our world that Kalos is based on, where Professor Sycamore is actually from. So all in all, the idea here is that Professor Sycamore, in order to study under Professor Rowan, traveled to Sinnoh in order to be one of his aides, and brought his son and or daughter Lucas/Dawn along with him as well. And finally, we have the idea that Shaymin was originally a concept for a new grass starter Pokemon before it was ultimately repurposed into a mythical Pokemon for the Sinnoh region. The evidence in favor of this is actually quite numerous and quite fascinating. Starting things off, you may or may not have heard the idea that Shaymin and Virizion, along with Shaymin's Skyform, look very, very similar to one another, almost as if they could have been part of their own evolutionary line at some point in time. If you look at them side by side, this is very evident, where you have Shaymin, who would have been the starting form of this evolutionary line, and then you have Shaymin's Skyform, who would have been the middle evolution, and you have Virizion as the final evolution. As far as all of these Pokemon being starters though, that is where it gets really interesting, because if we take a look at Virizion in particular, Virizion is based on one of the three French Musketeers, and of course we know that France was actually the basis for the Kalos region in Generation 6. On top of that, Virizion is also the grass fighting type, which is the same type as the final form of the grass starter from Kalos, Chestnut, who is also grass fighting type. And if we take a look at Chestnut's pre-evolved form and the first form of this grass starter family, Chespin, Chespin is based on a hedgehog, which is also the same inspiration for Shaymin, who is also the very first form in this would-be starter evolution family, along with its Sky form and Virizion. And as if that wasn't enough already, there is also a very specific species of hedgehog that very closely resembles Shaman, known as the European hedgehog. And of course, Kalos is based in France, which of course is in Europe, and it's currently the only European-based region we have. So take that into consideration when I bring up this next point, and that is that the European hedgehog has been described as a quote-unquote favorite in gardens, which is a signature feature of Shaman, as in Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, it is found in the Flower Paradise, which is essentially just one big garden. So between the connections to other Pokemon as a possible evolutionary family, and between all of the connections to the Chespin starter family, as well as France and the Kalos region in general, I think it is very likely that Shaman was once considered as a possible new grass starter Pokemon, and maybe this French inspiration of its evolutionary line is where the idea for a France-based region in Kalos began to take shape. And there we have it, everybody. Those were 5 of the best Sinnoh Pokemon theories of all time, in my own opinion. Now, like I said, this was a fantastic crop of theories, as Sinnoh is definitely known for all of its myths and legends, which of course result in a lot of fantastic fan theories. But what did you guys think of this group? If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like, and if you liked these theories or have any opinions on them, please leave that in the comments below, and if you have another theory you'd like to share that comes from Sinnoh, definitely let me know with a comment below as well. If you are new to the channel, be sure to subscribe for more Pokemon content every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, and if you enjoy Pokemon remixes, consider following me on Spotify, as I've got a bunch of my own on there, and listening to my stuff on there directly supports my channel here, and I would greatly appreciate it. With all of that being said though, I will be back on Tuesday for another video, so be sure to hit that notification bell so you can be notified when it goes live, and until then, as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend. You know I love you guys, and I will smell you guys later.